My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 46 years old, and for the longest time, right up until about a year ago, I was under the impression that I had my life completely figured out. I worked as a construction manager in Charlotte, North Carolina, pulling in a solid $90,000 a year. It wasn't a king's ransom, but it was certainly enough to build a comfortable existence for me and my wife, Sophia, in our lovely three-bedroom house on Willow Creek Lane, a peaceful street nestled in the historic Dilworth neighborhood. Sophia and I had been married for 8 years. She was a beautiful woman, incredibly ambitious, and she came from money. We're talking about that specific kind of old southern wealth that you see in sprawling country estates and memberships at exclusive golf clubs. Her family, the Sterlings, never tried to hide their opinion that I was a major downgrade for their precious daughter. They made that point with all the grace of a wrecking ball when they insisted I sign a prenuptial agreement before our wedding in late 2016. This is just a formality, a way to protect the family's legacy assets, Sophia's father, Arthur Sterling, had explained in a chilly tone, seated behind a massive, polished mahogany desk in his lawyer's uptown office. It's nothing personal, Ethan, strictly business. I put my signature on that document without a moment's hesitation. I was completely head over heels for Sophia, and when you're that lost in love, you're prone to making some pretty dumb moves. The prenup seemed straightforward enough. Anything they owned before we got married stayed theirs. Anything I owned stayed mine. Any assets we built up together during the marriage would be considered marital property. On the surface, it sounded perfectly fair. If you're a fan of stories about methodical justice and spectacular turnarounds, do yourself a favor and hit the like button on this video and subscribe to the channel this instant. We release brand new, exclusive stories on here every single day, and each one is even more captivating than the last. For 8 years, our marriage felt unshakable. We weren't rich by her family's lofty standards, but we were truly happy. Sophia had a part-time gig as a curator at a small art gallery over in the Noda Arts District, a job she kept more for personal satisfaction than for the money, which was about $28,000 a year. Our evenings were filled with the typical conversations of a married couple, talking about when we might have kids, fantasizing about a slightly bigger house with a more spacious yard. It was all so beautifully ordinary. And then, on a cool Tuesday morning in October of 2024, the very ground beneath my feet gave way. For as long as I had known her, Sophia had a ritual of playing the exact same lottery numbers every week. It was a sentimental combination of her family's birthdays and the date of our anniversary. One of these days, Ethan, she would often say, a hopeful glimmer in her eye, these numbers will make us millionaires. On that Tuesday, her words became reality, an incredible $15 million jackpot. After the IRS took its share, North Carolina fortunately doesn't tax lottery prizes, the final payout was a little over $9.8 million. I can still see it clearly, standing in our kitchen that night, the thin paper ticket shaking in my hand as my brain struggled to wrap itself around the magnitude of those numbers. Sophia was a blur of ecstatic energy, screaming with pure joy, bouncing around the room and frantically dialing her parents. "We're rich, Ethan!" she yelled, throwing her arms around my neck in a crushing hug. "We are actually genuinely rich!" For about 10 minutes, I let myself believe that every dream we had ever shared had just been put on the fast track. That same evening, it was as if the entire Sterling dynasty descended on our humble home. Sophia's parents, Arthur and Eleanor, showed up first, soon followed by her brother Julian, and even her famously snobbish Aunt Beatrice, a woman who usually looked straight through me like I was made of glass. They were in full party mode, popping the corks on pricey champagne bottles and already sketching out extravagant plans. But underneath all the noise and celebratory chatter, a weird feeling started to wash over me. Something was deeply wrong. The way they were looking at me had changed. It was barely noticeable at first, just quick, sidelong glances they'd exchange with each other, conversations that would die down the second I entered a room. Sophia seemed different too. A new kind of distance had appeared in her eyes, a frosty coldness that wasn't there that morning. In the days that followed, the air in our house turned thick and poisonous. Sophia started having long, hushed phone calls with her family, always making a point to leave the room if I got close, her voice dropping to a guarded whisper. Anytime I tried to talk about what we should do with the money, she would get defensive and vague. "We need to be smart about this, Ethan," she would say. her words a direct echo of her father's. My father has connections, the best financial advisors. We have to protect this windfall. Exactly 3 weeks after the win, on November 2nd, Sophia asked me to sit down with her in the living room. Her parents were already there, positioned on our sofa like a panel of judges, a detail that should have been a screaming red flag. "Ethan," Sophia started, her voice sounding stiff and strangely formal, "we have to talk about our situation." Arthur Sterling cleared his throat with an air of self-importance. "Son, this lottery win changes everything. Sophia's windfall needs to be managed with proper professional protection." I felt a tight knot forming in the pit of my stomach. "Our windfall," I corrected him, fighting to keep my voice from shaking. "We're married. You know, the whole what's yours is mine, what's mine is yours deal, right?" A freezing silence filled the room. Sophia's mother, Eleanor, gave her husband a loaded look. Julian, who was leaning against the window frame, let a smug little smile play on his lips. "As a matter of fact, Ethan," Arthur went on, his tone dripping with condescension, "that's not quite how this is going to play out. You see, lottery winnings are frequently considered to be personal property, especially when—" His voice faded. "When what?" I shot back, my patience wearing dangerously thin. Sophia finally spoke up, though she wouldn't look me in the eye. "Ethan, I think it would be for the best if we separated for a bit. This money, it belongs to me. I won it. I was the one who chose the numbers." The words felt like a punch to the gut, stealing the air from my lungs. "What are you even talking about, Sophia?" "I'm saying I want a divorce," she said, her voice completely flat, stripped of all emotion. "And I need you to move out. Tonight." Arthur Sterling leaned in, his eyes shining with a look of victory. "The prenup you signed was designed to protect both of you, Ethan. Sophia's lottery prize is, by law, her separate property. You are not entitled to a single penny of it." I just sat there, totally numb, the room spinning around me. 8 years of a life we built together, of love and partnership, and they were kicking me to the curb like last week's garbage the instant a pile of money showed up. "I get it," I said, my voice barely audible. "So this was the play all along." "Nothing was planned," Sophia snapped, a flicker of defensiveness in her eyes. "But now that this has happened, I'm not going to let anyone take advantage of me." Take advantage. That was her new term for our marriage. "Fine," I said, a cold determination solidifying inside me as I got to my feet. "I'll go pack my things." A wave of obvious relief washed over Sophia's face. Her family looked smugly pleased with how easily I had given in. They had no earthly idea what they had just set in motion. I found a room at an extended stay hotel on the edge of the city that night, the sterile space costing me $120 a night. But instead of wallowing in misery and feeling sorry for myself, I did the one thing they clearly never saw coming. I picked up the phone and I called a lawyer. I got in touch with Marcus Thorne, a name I'd heard spoken in quiet, almost fearful tones by a few guys at my job who had gone through their own nasty divorces. His reputation as one of the most formidable family law attorneys in North Carolina was well deserved. The initial consultation cost $700, but it would prove to be the best money I ever spent. "Mr. Cole," Thorne said, his voice calm and steady as we sat in his impressive uptown office the next morning. "Tell me everything about this prenuptial agreement." I gave him the copy I had smartly kept in a personal file at home. Thorne scanned the dense legal document with sharp focus, his expression changing from neutral to fascinated with every page he turned. "Well, this is quite interesting," he murmured, glancing up at me. "Your father-in-law's attorney was extremely thorough. You might even say, a little too thorough. I was lost." "What do you mean?" Thorne tapped a perfectly manicured finger on a particular clause on the 3rd page. "Right here, section 5.3. It clearly states that any and all assets, prizes, or winnings of any nature acquired during the term of the marriage shall be considered marital property, subject to equitable distribution in the event of a divorce." My heart started to hammer against my ribs, but they told me lottery winnings are personal property. In the state of North Carolina, a lottery ticket that is bought with marital money during a marriage is, without a doubt, marital property. And even if Sophia had used her own separate money, this prenup you have here specifically cancels out any of that ambiguity. They wrote their own trap. Thorne leaned back in his chair, and a slow, confident grin spread across his face. Mr. Cole, your in-laws, in their rush to protect their old family money, have accidentally handed you the keys to the new money. A wave of cold, sharp satisfaction washed over me. So, I get half? According to this contract they made you sign, you have an incredibly strong case for it. But don't be mistaken, they will fight you on this with every resource they have. They have deep pockets. My retainer for a case like this is $20,000. I didn't even blink. I maxed out my credit cards and took a loan against my 401k to pay for it. It was the single best investment I would ever make. Over the next few weeks, Sophia and the Sterling family made their intentions perfectly clear. They hired the most notoriously cutthroat and expensive divorce lawyer in Charlotte, a shark named Alastair Finch, who was known for representing the city's richest citizens. His hourly rate was an eye-watering $1,000. Finch immediately launched a campaign of intimidation, burying my lawyer's office in a blizzard of threatening letters that demanded I drop any and all claims to the lottery prize. His main argument was that since Sophia personally picked the numbers and bought the ticket, it was her separate property, conveniently ignoring the plain language of their own prenup. They had completely underestimated me. They saw a blue-collar construction manager and assumed I would fold under pressure and gratefully take whatever small payout they might throw my way. They were in for a very rude awakening. Thorne and I used the rest of November and December to meticulously construct our case. We documented every last detail. We tracked down the exact time the ticket was bought and, more importantly, which bank account the money had come from. We were able to get records proving that Sophia had been using our joint Truist checking account to buy her weekly lottery tickets for years. But the true legal checkmate came when Thorne dug up a treasure in the North Carolina general statutes. Ethan, he explained during a strategy meeting in late December, his excitement obvious. Chapter 50, Section 20 of the state law is absolutely clear. Property acquired by either spouse during the marriage is presumed to be marital property. This includes lottery winnings. The burden of proof is on them to prove it's separate. But won't they just argue the prenup doesn't apply to it? I asked. Thorne grinned, a sharp glint in his eye. That's the beautiful poetic justice of this entire thing. The very prenup they tried to use as a club against you is now our most powerful piece of evidence. They were so obsessed with protecting their pre-existing family wealth that they wrote a clause so broad about any prizes or winnings that they accidentally guaranteed your right to any future jackpots. Meanwhile, Sophia was living the high life. In November, she bought herself a brand new Porsche Cayenne for almost $90,000, went on huge shopping binges for designer clothes at South Park Mall, and put down a non-refundable deposit on a massive $1 million penthouse condo with a view of the whole city. Her social media was a constant stream of pictures from extravagant dinners at restaurants like the Fig Tree and exclusive parties, all of it paid for with our money. She was blowing through the winnings at a shocking speed, and every single Instagram post was another exhibit for our case. The official divorce proceedings began in January 2025. Finch, Sophia's lawyer, came out of his corner swinging like a trapped animal. He filed a flurry of motions to get my claims thrown out, describing me in court documents as a gold-digging opportunist trying to take advantage of a supposed legal loophole. During our first time in front of the judge at the Mecklenburg County Courthouse on January 15th, Finch's arrogance was on full display. He strutted around the courtroom in his custom-made $3,000 suit, making theatrical, nasty comments about predatory spouses to anyone who would listen. "Your Honor," Finch announced with a dramatic wave of his hand, "Mr. Cole is shamelessly trying to claim half of a prize that his estranged wife won through her own personal luck and intuition. The lottery ticket was bought with Mrs. Sterling's personal money, using numbers that were deeply meaningful to her own family. This is the very definition of separate property." Judge Evelyn Reed, a woman known for being scrupulously fair and for having seen everything in her 20 years on the family court bench, listened with a blank expression. Thorne got to his feet for our rebuttal. Your Honor, North Carolina law is perfectly clear on this matter. But even more importantly, the prenuptial agreement, which Mr. Finch's own clients insisted on, has a clause that specifically defines any prizes or winnings acquired during the marriage as marital property. The contract speaks for itself. Finch let out a dismissive scoff. That clause, Your Honor, was obviously meant to apply to small winnings, maybe a little prize from a casino or a local raffle, not a $15 million lottery jackpot. The document says any prizes or winnings, Your Honor, Thorne replied calmly. It does not set a monetary limit. The language is absolute. Judge Reed asked for copies of all the relevant documents. She postponed the hearing for 2 weeks, giving herself time to study the evidence and the prenup. Sophia was furious. I heard from a mutual friend that she had been screaming at her parents, blaming them for the ironclad wording in the prenup they had made me sign. The Sterling family's confidence was starting to show cracks. They made an attempt to settle out of court in early February. Arthur Sterling called my personal cell, something he had never done in the 8 years I was married to his daughter. Ethan, let's be sensible about this, he said, his voice sounding tight and strained. We're willing to offer you $1.5 million. Just walk away, and this is all over. It's more money than you've ever seen in your life. I'll have to think about it, I said coolly, even though my mind was already made up. 2 days later, a desperate-looking Sophia showed up at my dreary extended-stay hotel. She looked exhausted and stressed. The constant partying and legal battle were obviously wearing her down. Ethan, please, she begged, her voice shaking. We can figure this out. I was just scared, okay? The amount of money, it was just so much my family got in my head. Scared of what, Sophia? Scared of sharing your good luck with your husband? I'll give you $4 million, she said, her desperation obvious. $4 million, Ethan. We can both get a fresh start. I looked at the woman in front of me, the woman I had once loved more than anything, and all I felt was a deep sense of pity. It was never about the money, Sophia, I said softly. It was about the disrespect. She left in tears. I almost felt a twinge of sympathy for her. Almost. The discovery phase, which ran through February and March, was a goldmine that revealed just how badly they had mismanaged their strategy. Thorne subpoenaed all of Sophia's financial records, which gave us undeniable proof that she had been using our joint account for her lottery ticket habit for years. We had bank statements going back to 2019 that showed a clear pattern of marital money being spent on this specific activity. Even more damaging was the advice Finch had apparently given Sophia. Instead of isolating the winnings in a new, separate account, she had been spending it recklessly, mixing the lottery money with other marital assets. In legal terms, this act of commingling completely destroyed her claim that the money was separate, but the final nail in their legal coffin was a rookie error made by their high-priced attorney. In his initial arrogant haste to file motions back in November, Finch had actually admitted in a court document that the lottery ticket was purchased during the marriage with funds from the marital estate. He just blew up his own argument, Thorne told me, barely able to hide his delight. Finch is so used to strong-arming his opponents into giving up that he got careless and didn't double-check his own filings. The final hearing was scheduled for April 18, 2025. As the date got closer, the Sterlings' desperation became pathetic. They hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on me, but my life was an open book. He found nothing. They then tried to change their strategy, making up claims that I had been emotionally abusive, a desperate attempt to lower any potential settlement. Sophia gave a tearful deposition claiming I was controlling and manipulative. The problem for them was the total lack of any evidence. No police reports, no therapist notes, no witnesses, just their baseless, self-serving accusations. Thorne systematically took apart their lies with phone records showing Sophia was the one who made most of our financial decisions, and bank statements proving I had never limited her access to our money. Her own social media history painted a picture of a happy, carefree woman living a joyful life throughout our entire marriage. 3 days before the hearing, Finch made one last, desperate settlement offer, $5 million. It's a solid offer, Ethan, Thorne advised me dutifully. There's always some risk when you go to trial, no matter how strong your case is. I shook my head without a second thought. This was never about getting the biggest possible payout, Marcus. This is about justice. The night before the court date, I couldn't sleep. I paced the floor of my little motel room, playing the whole saga over in my head, from the cold intimidation in that lawyer's office 8 years ago to the moment Sophia told me to get out. My mind was crystal clear. On the morning of the hearing, the courtroom was thick with tension. Sophia and her family sat at the defendant's table, a picture of grim-faced anxiety. Finch was whispering urgently in her ear, no doubt trying to prepare her for what was coming. At exactly 9 a.m., Judge Reed took her seat. We are here today for the matter of Cole versus Sterling, case number 2025-DR-002-8470. Mr. Finch, you may begin with your opening argument. Finch stood up, trying to look confident, but I could see the slight shake in his hands. Your Honor, this case is the tragic story of a vindictive husband trying to lay claim to money he had no part in earning. Mrs. Sterling chose the numbers, she bought the ticket, and she won the prize through her own individual actions. Thorne stayed seated, calmly scribbling notes on a yellow legal pad, the very picture of composure. Finch talked for almost 20 minutes, repeating his arguments that the winnings were separate property, that the prenup was never intended for such a large sum, and that I was a classic gold digger. When he finally sat down, Judge Reed looked at my lawyer. Mr. Thorne, your opening statement. Thorne stood up slowly, deliberately. Your Honor, this case is, in reality, remarkably straightforward. We have a prenuptial agreement drafted by the defendant's own legal team and signed by both parties in December 2016. This document explicitly states that any prizes or winnings acquired during the marriage are marital property. We have North Carolina state law that overwhelmingly backs this position. And we have documented proof that the lottery ticket in question was bought with marital funds during the marriage. He paused, looking straight at Alistair Finch. The defendants are, in essence, asking this court to throw out their own contract simply because they don't like how it turned out. The evidence portion of the trial was a complete demolition of their case. Thorne presented years of bank records from our joint Truist account highlighting every single lottery purchase. He showed how Sophia had mixed the funds. He even produced the time-stamped receipt from the Harris Teeter gas station where she bought the winning ticket on October 8, 2024, paid for with our joint debit card at 3:47 p.m. Finch's cross-examination was weak. He tried to argue about Sophia's intent to keep the money separate, but intent is legally meaningless when your actions prove the opposite. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. Thorne called Finch's entire legal strategy into question by reading from his own court filing. Mr. Finch, in your preliminary motion from November 18, 2024, you stated, and I'm quoting, "The lottery ticket in question was purchased during the marriage with funds from the marital estate." Do you remember writing that, sir? The colour drained from Finch's face. That was a misstatement. A misstatement that you signed and filed with this court under penalty of perjury. Yes. Judge Reed leaned forward, her eyes narrowed. Mr. Finch, are you telling this court that you filed false documents? No, Your Honor. I misspoke in the document. I meant to write... Thorne cut him off. Your Honor, Mr. Finch's own filings confirm our entire position. He has already admitted that marital funds were used. The Sterling family looked physically sick. Arthur was visibly sweating through his expensive shirt. Eleanor was just shaking her head in disbelief. When Sophia took the stand, she was a mess. Finch had prepped her, but she was completely flustered. Mrs. Sterling, Thorne started his cross-examination gently, you testified that you always intended for any lottery winnings to be your separate property. Is that right? Yes. Then can you explain why you deposited the entire $9.8 million into your personal checking account at Bank of America, an account you had been using for years to pay for shared marital expenses? Sophia stammered. I needed somewhere to put it. You also have a separate savings account at Truist, don't you? An account your husband has never had access to? Yes, but an account that at the time had over $60,000 of your own money in it, correct? Yes. So you had a perfectly good place to keep the funds separate, but you decided not to. Instead, you mixed the prize money with marital funds and immediately started spending it on joint and personal things. Is that correct? Sophia looked desperately at Finch, but he couldn't do anything for her. I guess so. Thorne then held up the purchase agreement for her Porsche. You bought this car on November 15th, 2024, correct? Yes. For $87,000? Yes. Using the lottery money? Yes. And did you talk to your husband, Mr. Cole, about this major purchase? We were separated, she snapped. Ma'am, Thorne said calmly, you didn't file for divorce until November 20th. You were still legally married when you bought this car, so I'll ask you again, did you discuss this purchase with your husband? Her answer was a quiet, defeated no. Judge Reed called for a lunch break at 12:30. In the hallway, Arthur Sterling came up to me one last time. Ethan, this is completely insane. We will appeal any decision she makes. This will drag on for years. That's your right, Arthur, I said calmly, but I have plenty of time, and I have a very good lawyer. The afternoon session was brief. At 2:15 p.m., Judge Reed announced she had made her decision. I have reviewed all the evidence and the relevant state laws, she began, her voice echoing through the silent courtroom. The prenuptial agreement signed in December 2016 is clear and unambiguous. Section 5.3 explicitly states that any prizes or winnings acquired during the marriage are marital property. North Carolina Statute 50-20 further reinforces this interpretation. Furthermore, the defendant's own actions in co-mingling the lottery winnings with marital assets shows a clear failure to keep these funds as separate property. Sophia began to sob uncontrollably, her mother clutching her hand. Therefore, the judge continued, this court awards Mr. Cole 50% of the net lottery winnings, which comes to $4.9 million. Mrs. Sterling, you will have 60 days to liquidate assets as needed to satisfy this judgment. The sound of the gavel hitting the block at 2:22 p.m. was the sweetest sound I have ever heard. Outside the courthouse, a crowd of local news reporters were shouting questions at me. I walked past all of them, stopping for just one from a local TV station. Mr. Cole, how does it feel to win? I paused and thought about it for a moment. Justice, I said, always feels good. 2 months later, in June 2025, I used part of my settlement to buy a small, well-respected construction company from a retiring owner. Today, Cole Construction has 40 employees, and we specialize in building quality, affordable housing projects all over the Charlotte area. Sophia was forced to sell her new Porsche, give up the deposit on her penthouse, and sell off almost all of her designer clothes and bags to pay the judgment. The last I heard, she was working as a receptionist at her father's real estate company. The Sterling family never said another word to me, which is perfectly fine by me. They showed me who they really were the moment they thought they could throw me away without any consequences. Sometimes the best revenge isn't really revenge at all. It's just letting people get crushed under the weight of their own greed and arrogance. They created the very weapon that brought about their own downfall. I just had the self-respect to pick it up and use it. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and drop a comment below to let me know what you thought of the outcome. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories just like this one. You won't want to miss what's coming next. End of story.